An Arizona state senator shared her plan to end her pregnancy in an effort to show how the state's abortion restrictions made it more painful and less healthy. Eva Birch, a Democrat and a mother of two, has struggled for years with fertility after being told by a medical provider she would not be able to deliver a healthy baby and that she and her husband made the difficult decision to seek an abortion. On Monday, Birch took to the floor of the Arizona State Senate to share her story. She told her colleagues that she had visited a clinic where she was given an invasive ultrasound and counseling on alternatives to abortion, despite already knowing that her pregnancy was not viable. Required under state law, those experiences, Birch said, were cruel.
I don't know how many of you know this, but a few weeks ago I learned that, against all odds, I am pregnant. Many of you know that I've had kind of a rough journey with fertility. I had my first miscarriage more than 13 years ago, and I have been pregnant many times since then. Twice I was lucky enough to successfully carry to term, and I have two beautiful, healthy little boys. Now, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but after numerous ultrasounds and blood draws, we have determined that my pregnancy is once again not progressing and is not viable. I'm choosing to talk about why I made this decision because I want us to be able to have meaningful conversations about the reality of how the work that we do in this body impacts people in the real world. I don't know how many of you have been unfortunate enough to experience a miscarriage before, but I am not interested in going through it unnecessarily. And right now, the safest and most appropriate treatment for me and the treatment that I choose is abortion. But the laws that this legislature has passed has interfered with my ability to do that, along with countless others. Arizonans deserve the freedom and the liberty to make those decisions for themselves. I will never try to force someone to have an abortion. And nobody should ever try to prevent me from having mine.
So what she's doing here, I think Democrats need to listen up because she is describing in real time, using her own personal situation, why abortion is health care. It's one thing to call it a right to choose what happens to your body, but Republicans will mangle that. Abortion is health care, as it is in this case where she has a pregnancy that is not viable. And instead of wait for a miscarriage or wait for something dangerous to happen, she's trying to get health care. And stories like the one we just heard are what Democrats say will make all the difference at the ballot box in November. The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the organization whose job it is to elect more state Democrats and win legislative majorities, is planning on making reproductive rights the cornerstone of its campaign. Joining us now, President of that committee, Heather Williams. And Heather, it's good to have you on the show. I want to ask you about what I just said, but first, I want to know how big is the challenge ahead here? How many state legislatures have Democrats lost ground in? Because, as we all know, it does start in the state legislators. Donald Trump is building a bench for himself.
Yeah, no, it's such a great question. And, I think just to kind of tie it into Senator Eva Birch, we see this really courageous woman who is illustrating how impactful these horrific laws that Republicans are moving in state capitals across the country where they have control, how horrific they are and how impactful they are to our decisions around bodily autonomy, around our health care, and around our freedoms. Democrats have been gaining grounds in state houses for election cycles now. Just last cycle, we created new majorities that protected the rights of more than 30 million Americans. And we have a really big map of opportunities this election cycle. And we know that the stakes are incredibly high, that decisions around our freedoms, our reproductive freedoms, around our democracy, around how we care for each other in our communities are being decided in the states.
So we know that the Trump campaign says that it's going to try and present Donald Trump as what they call moderate on abortion by imposing, says he wants to impose a 16-week national ban. On the Democratic side, what are you hearing on reaction to that proposition, and how is that a message that you will counter from the Democrat side?
I mean, I think to put it simply, a ban is a ban. And what Senator Birch illustrates is not just how the laws are affecting her, but how these policies, how these bans, how the Republican approach to removing our choices around our health care by putting up barriers to getting the kind of care that we as women need, that Republicans can't win on this issue. They're not winning on this issue. The American people do not trust them, and they believe that we should have access to a full slate of reproductive health care and that we should have reproductive freedoms.
So let's talk about the issue of IVF, which some Republicans have really tried to run away from since the decision there in Alabama. But at the same time, their efforts to codify it in the building behind you have gone nowhere, blocked by Republicans. So, Heather, tell us how you guys are going to try to make that argument about IVF right now to a lot of women, a lot of families in this country who are still really nervous about its future.
Yeah, I think this illustrates why the work that we do at the DLCC, really setting this national agenda for these legislative races across the country, matters so much. What happened in Alabama around IVF is not unique to Alabama. We are seeing Republicans run with this issue. We are seeing them restrict our access to, tools that are used to grow families, tools that are used to, evaluate our health care. And I think that is so, it's just so important. And just to, I think, put a finer point on it, right? These legislative elections happening across the country, this is not $1 billion operation that we're running here. If everyone watching right now contributed $1 at dlcc.org, we would be able to work to protect the reproductive freedoms for millions of people around the country.
President of the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, Heather Williams, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you so much.
Coming up on Morning Joe.